Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel. If you guys have been following my channel for a while, you might be wondering why I am updating videos just so rare, like only one time a week, and just because recently I am playing in two very important tournaments in China. And right now, all of them have finished. One is a classical event, the highest level tournament in China. It is the Chinese Chess Championship. And the other is a rapid event, which I am in third place. But nonetheless, in the classical tournament, I had a really nice score, and my rating, my FIDE rating, grew a lot and almost is reaching 2000. So that is some good news for me, and I'm gonna share with you guys. And that is also the reason why I wasn't able to record so many videos to update. But now finally I am back at home, and today we're going to be taking a look at this very high level and recent tournament, and this is the SuperUnited Rapid and Blitz Croatia. And this is the third leg and the second Rapid and Blitz tournament in the 2025 Grand Chess Tour. There are many players, well, not many, but there are 10 players, if I'm not mistaken, who are participating. And before we take a look at the main game we're going to see today, I'm going to quickly introduce this whole tournament because the format is also very interesting for you guys to remember, and it can also help you guys know more about the games, like the background. So here, the players, well, yes, indeed, there's 10 players. And we have Magnus Carlsen, the GOAT. We have the current World Chess Champion, Gukesh Dommaraju. And then here we have Fabiano Caruana, Nurdirbek Abdusadarov, Pragnanda Ramesh Babu, Alireza Firouzja, Wesley So, Duda, Anish Giri, Ivan Sarek. All of them top grandmasters and are participating in this tournament, playing rapid games and blitz games. And now here comes the format, which is very interesting. The 2025 SuperUnited Rapid and Blitz Croatia features a single round robin, rapid round robin that is, and followed by a blitz double round robin. The player with the most points at the end of the tournament wins. So this means that not only that if you had a very nice score in the rapid section, but also you need to keep performing extremely well in the blitz section in order to take first place. So you have to play extremely well in two different time controls. In the rapid, it's a single round robin. Time control is 25 minutes plus 10-second each move increment, and 2 points for a win, 1 point for a draw, and 0 points for nothing, like losing. Blitz, it's a double round robin, which means that one player will play against a player for 2 times with the black pieces and the white pieces, and the time control is 5 minutes plus 2-second each move increment. 1 point for a win, half a point for a draw. So this is very important for us to remember, and here are the prizes, which is actually extremely high. But also, more important is that players, they earn Grand Chess Tour points based on their performance in each of the Grand Chess Tour events. And this Grand Chess Tour points, they are divided equally among top players, and this can be very important for the players because it can give them the opportunity to play in the candidates and in many more tournaments. So now that you guys have finally know a little bit about this tournament, now let's jump into this very important game, and a game that is actually attracting a ton of attention. This game is played between the GOAT, Magnus Carlsen, and the current World Chess Champion, the youngest world champion in the world, Gukesh Dommaraju. Gukesh with the black pieces, Magnus with the white pieces, and these two, they have been playing against each other for already a couple of times ever since Gukesh has become the world champion, and there have been all kinds of results. And let's see what has happened in this game. So this is the rapid game, and here Gukesh responds with e5. We have the English opening, bishop b4, knight f3, bishop takes c3, d takes c3, d6. The opening is actually quite standard for these two, and they are basically playing out each move really fast without wasting too much time, because this is rapid chess, and saving your time or using your time in a very efficient way is as important as in blitz games. And here Magnus plays the move e4, fixing the pawn structure, opening up some space for the bishop to come here. And here we have the move knight d7, bishop d3, knight c5, bishop goes to c2, knight f6. Here we have queen e2 defending the e4 pawn. Even though both sides are playing pretty fast so far, but this position already, Magnus did make a few inaccurate replies in the opening, and already this position is quite leading a little bit just tilting a little bit towards black's side, and Gukesh is actually doing slightly better here. Here we have the move a5, preventing b4, knight d2 back, g6. Now, g6 is a move that is quite like a mistake at this point. Simply black can just play short castle, or if he wants to prevent b4 even more, he can just push a4 and gain more space at the same time on the queen side. But instead in the game, g6 was played, and this is a move that is kind of curious for me, because the only usage for this move probably is that in the future you can move your knight back and there's always some f5 ideas coming or something. But g6, the bad thing about it is that it weakens these dark squares, and it's just not a good move by black. And here Magnus, thinking for a few seconds, played the move knight f1, and his idea is to maneuver his knight to e3 to d5 most likely. Here Gukesh plays bishop e6, developing his pieces, but then it just shows that there's no connection between these two moves, g6 and bishop e6. He can simply play bishop e6 immediately if he wants to. So when you're playing chess in a general situation, when you play these two moves but they have no connection, or your opponent played two moves that has no connection, usually one of them or even both of them are the wrong idea, are not good moves. And in this case, g6 is the bad move. It wastes a tempo, basically. Bishop e6, bishop g5, and as you can see, this knight also simply just lost one defender. The g7 pawn could have defended it well, but then the pawn is now on g6, and this knight is weaker. But Gukesh, he kept on playing really nicely so far. h6, bishop h4, and then g5. Bishop g3, queen d7. So even though Gukesh plays g6 and then g5, but still at this point, he is not completely worse too much, and Magnus still needs to find a way to improve his advantage. He played the move f3 here, gaining control of the light squares, also supporting the e4 pawn. Not a bad idea. Knight h5, knight e3, knight f4, queen d2, b5. This is a very aggressive option for Gukesh. Normally here, what he should have played instead is probably to go for these very positional options like queen c6 or even rook g8. But he starts a queenside attack immediately by pushing his pawns and plays the move b5. Now asking white the question, how are you going to respond? Here white has many options to respond. He can play knight d5, bishop takes f4, or even b4 if he wants to. And also he can take on b5. But here Magnus plays the best move and plays the move knight d5. Now, this move is really deadly because it is also threatening knight f6 at the same time forking the queen and the king. So basically for black needs to take it. The question is whether to take with the knight or with the bishop. In this case, if you take with a knight, this is really bad because simply you just trap the bishop on e6 after c takes d5. So black needs to take with the bishop. But after this, c takes d5, the reason that b5 is not a good option is because now at this point, it is two bishops versus two knights. And even though the position is slightly closed so far, there's just a few open diagonals, but still the two bishops, as the game goes into the end games or the later part of the middle game, it could be beneficial for the white pieces with the two bishops. But so far, black is still holding everything together. Knight h5, no longer that accurate by Gukesh. He plays the move knight h5, and it is a question mark because simply White's bishop on g3 is not an active piece, and it is bound to go back to f2, but right now it can't because this knight can just simply take on g2. But now after this move, knight h5, the bishop can just happily go back to f2 without worrying about the g2 pawn, and also this bishop is very happy and much more powerful on this diagonal compared to this diagonal. And here White is actually already having a really huge positional advantage, and with great handling of it, Magnus should be winning. Gukesh here didn't panic. He played the move king f8, and his idea is to play king g7 to get his king to a safer place without moving the rook, because the rook can be helpful in the later attack on the king side. Here Magnus plays the move g3, preventing knight f4, and here, oops, sorry, my keyboard just suddenly jumped one to square. King g7, like here we have g3, king g7, and here bishop e3. The bishop comes to e3, and there could, at some point, potentially, there's some bishop g5 ideas. And here, Gukesh plays queen e7, defending the g5 pawn, rook g1, knight f6 back, b4. Not really a huge mistake, but it also gives black some counterplay, because after a takes b4, c takes b4, this a file is now opened, and the a2 pawn could become a potential weakness in White's territory. Here Gukesh plays knight a4, bishop d3 was played. And after this move, bishop d3, simply White just gave back all the advantage that he had. Now the question is that what can White do here? Already after the move b4, White is actually getting a little bit of trouble. Because even though White is still better, but at this point this knight is quite annoying on the a4 square, limiting White's pieces a little bit, and it's not a good idea for White to trade the bishop for the knight, because then he'll just lose the bishop pair, and this knight can reroute to the queen side, and the knight will be better than the bishop. So here, it is very important for Magnus to maneuver his pieces, and rook f1 is a move here, like, this is a move that is one of the engine's favorite, even though this kind of seems pretty much unhuman-like move. The idea is to go f4. In the future, another ideas are probably to play bishop b3 instead of bishop d3, but nonetheless here Magnus plays the move bishop d3, which probably is what most people are going to play because the bishop attacks the b5 pawn. But Gukesh will then just show you why bishop d3 is a bad move. First of all, he played the move c6, sacrificing a pawn, and White needs to take it, d takes c6, but here another pawn break move, d5. The point is that the bishop on d3 blockades this queen, and no longer White can take, and take the knight with the queen. So here, after d5, Magnus spent about a minute and took the d5 pawn, because if he had allowed it to keep on pushing after bishop b5, then d4 will be coming. The bishop will probably go back, but then it will just stay there forever inside its own pawn chains, and the d4 pawn is just putting way too much pressure on White's pieces. So here, basically, White needs to take on d5, but after knight takes d5, Black gets to activate his knight, and also, as you can see, suddenly this king is no longer that safe in the center of the board. Let's see how the game continued. Magnus here plays a3, defending the b4 pawn. Still, a pawn is a pawn, and material is very important at this point. Rook d8, rook c1, rook d6. Even though here Magnus is up a pawn, but still Black has a ton of counterplay, and White needs to be careful. Bishop takes b5. Another mistake by Magnus. In this case, he shouldn't be going for the pawns. And then, b5 pawn is like a poisonous pawn at this point. What he needs to do here is get his king to safety and play king f2, running away from this file, and most likely swing his rook over to here. And he should be fine if you had played king f2 or some of the other moves like rook g2 or h4. But instead, he decided to go for the pawn, and it just wastes too many time. Knight c3 was played here, opens up this file for the rook to attack the queen. There's no time for White to take the knight. The queen has to move. Well, in this case, Magnus plays bishop c5, not running away, but instead attacking the rook. Knight takes b5. The point is that if you take on c5, you lose the knight on c3. And if you take on d2, obviously you lose the queen on e7. And with that, also white will be able to push the pawns to victory. So here, the only move for Magnus is to take the bishop on b5, but after that, bishop takes d6 was played. White is up a material right now, but it's not winning for white because his king is in great danger, and also these pawns might seem a bit scary, but these two knights can coordinate with each other really well to prevent them from pushing further. Here, Gukesh, he reacted extremely well. After king f2, he played the move knight b6. His idea of going to c4 with these two knights, queen d3, queen e6, excellent play. This move not only threatens queen a2, but also at the same time there's queen h3 ideas, and it also supports the move knight c4. Magnus plays rook c5 here. This is a blunder, not a huge blunder, like not really blundering any material or anything, but in these grandmaster size, this is just the losing move of this whole game. What he should have played to keep the game pretty much equalized is to play the move c7. He needs to keep the tension on, and he needs to create some pressure towards black. Because this pawn on c7, just one square away from promotion, could give black some pressure, and therefore by that to limit his pieces. At least black needs to keep some pieces on the squares to prevent the pawn from pushing. But however, in the game, Magnus again goes for a move that seems so natural, the move rook c5, the idea of doubling the rooks on the c file, but simply he just missed this very next move, and brilliant move played by Gukesh, breaking through e4. And now what can I do? Well, Magnus went for this check on d4, but simply, king g8 was played. It's a miss, but it's not a big deal. Black is still better. Rook d1, another mistake, and now here, Gukesh just simply takes the pawn on f3. He could have also taken the pawn on a3, but both of these two moves are the best moves considered by the engine. Rook e3 is slightly better, but taking on f3, not a bad move. Rook e5 was played here, which loses immediately on the spot. At this point, Magnus still has 44 minutes left on the clock, where Gukesh still has 5 minutes. Already there's a time advantage. The position, again, seems that white is pretty fine. The pawns are pretty high, and these knights are not really that active as it seems, but it's not that easy. They're all tons of tricks, and black is always threatening to take on a3. The only move here to prevent white from losing the game immediately is to play this move rook c2. The idea is to prevent black from going queen e2. And what other moves lead to is that if you take on f3 first, there's rook takes a3, black gets to activate his final piece and put it into the attack, and white's king is just going to be checkmated after a couple of moves. However, in the game, rook e5 was played instead, and the reason that this is also losing is because after queen h3, this is one of the ideas of the move queen e6 that I have just mentioned, not only to play queen a2, but also to go queen h3, threatening queen g2 or queen h2. What can white do? Magnus took the pawn on f3, desperately trying to find ways to defend, but after knight c4, here rook takes a3 would have won the game much faster, but knight c4 also not bad. Rook a5, blockading the rook, knight takes a5, pawn takes, queen f5, king goes back, queen c2 check, king goes back, knight jumps in, but it's a little bit tricky because white's pawns are still able to push, and the a8 rook is not that easy to activate. But here, Gukesh, with a 3-minute time advantage, played extremely well, and after queen c1, king f2, knight g4, knight e5, knight takes c6, there goes the main attacker of white's, in white's territory, the c6 pawn, and there's nothing that black needs to worry about anymore. Queen e4, his king is pretty safe behind these pawns. The rook is not able to move anywhere, and then after the move rook takes a5 here, Magnus resigned because he is down a full knight. Rook e5 is coming. There's no counterplay after all whatsoever for the white pieces. And with that, Gukesh in this match between him and Magnus Carlsen, he is the winner with perfect play. Well, almost perfect play. He did make some inaccuracies in the opening. Magnus was eventually really in a good shape, but then in the middle game and in the end game parts, well, not in the end game, but in the later parts of the middle games, he showed great techniques and also used really well the time advantage that he had to put pressure on Magnus, and eventually won this game, which is a very important win for him. And this also led to his great performance in the rapid section. Immediately, he is the first place in the rapid, but still, he also needs to perform well in the Blitz in order these two results combine and he can then become the champion of this whole tournament. But it's not that easy, and so far the Blitz is still going on, and Magnus is right now in first place in the Blitz section, but who knows, anything can happen. And in this game, Gukesh played extremely well. So yeah, I learned a lot of things from this game and hope you guys also did. And thank you for watching my recap of this game as well as this video. Please subscribe and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!